If you can't convince us of the environment that we're trying to build, the audience isn't going to believe in the story. Hi, my name is Anthony. I'm an editor, and I'm here to break down a short documentary for Moderna called Life After COVID. Before I even start ingesting the footage, I am taking the script and I'm circling every little thing that I would focus on as an editor. That includes sound effects, that includes pacing, that includes what the story beats build up towards. Because the intro and the outro are the strongest points of your film. The climax is the most important section of your film, but the audience will 99% of the time remember the intro and outro first. So let's take a look at the first scene. I wanted to build this world properly by building the intrigue, and I think a lot of editors, they try to give too much information at once. I strongly believe that it's really important to give them a little at a time. Kind of like a discussion. You know, you don't want to give too much about yourself all at once. You want to shuffle in a little bit at a time in order for them to stay engaged. So the music that I'm using, because we're in such an informative and technical documentary, it falls under the classification of pads and atmospheres. We didn't want to become too clunky and too glamorous about what we want to pick, which would take away from the content of the actual documentary. So we have Blair here. He's setting up his projector. All that extra stuff in the background, the film reel, the projector sounds, they're all added in afterwards. And I took that from Joe Walker, who edited Dune. He strongly believed that you have to world build or else the film isn't believable. And that meant, you know, close-ups, sounds that are integral to the environment. All those little things are super important to make all this convincing, because if the world's not convincing, then we as an audience won't believe in the film. Because if you can't convince us of the environment that we're trying to build, the audience isn't going to believe in the story. In every little scene, I think every editor does the same thing. We all look at everything first. We sift through it and we digest what is readily available for us. Kyle was good enough to film more than 30 minutes of footage just for this one intro. But how do you find the right pieces? My philosophy is you want to pick the close-ups first. The close-ups are not just because I am trying to build that intrigue for this world. We're trying to build intensity and emotion. The close-ups gives us the biggest intensity, emotion, and reaction. So start with that, then build around it. Wides are great, but when you're using a wide, you're less in tune with what's happening. Build what is assumed from the script, and cut what is right based on story and based on information. And then when you focus on the close-ups first, make it as long as you want it. It doesn't matter. Make it as long as you want. Then when you go back, in the 5th or 6th revision, then that's when you take out pieces that don't matter much, because every second counts. Every second counts. Every shot counts, and you don't want to linger on an idea too much.
Chapter 1. Is COVID-19 over?
We have a little transitional effect going on, and Kevin, our sound editor, added the traffic sounds, which was added to the world building, like I said.
Chapter 1. Is COVID-19 over? Well, believe it or not, it's been 4 years since COVID-19 came onto the scene. But despite how much of a thing of the past it may seem, I'm hearing from healthcare experts and practitioners that this respiratory disease is here to stay, and new data is emerging. I'm off to find out more.
That little cut-in wasn't necessary. We weren't trying to hide a continuity issue. It was a choice that Kyle made in order to give more emphasis to respiratory diseases. So, everything we want to do is intentional, and we want to be intentional with our decisions, and you'll see more of that throughout.
I want to start on the front lines. How do healthcare professionals feel about COVID-19 today? Is it still affecting their patients on a daily basis?
Cutaways.
I've just started some research, particularly on COVID-19. Should we still be worried about it? Is it a thing of the past?
All these titles were designed by our designer, Danny Lockhart, and we wanted to make sure that all the branding was uniform.
No, it's different than it was in 2020, of course, with more people being immunized or vaccinated, and then, of course, with the people who actually came down with COVID, the general immunity is greater, but it's definitely something that we still have to worry about, especially in vulnerable patient groups, right?
So for each of these scenes, like I said, each specialist had over, an hour of content. In order to really pinpoint what we wanted, we were working with the client and we were working with Kyle, and I was working with Kyle in terms of picking what the best information was needed. But as an editor, I always look for emotion and rhythm. Cut for emotion, and then cut to always advance the story. Those are the two rules. And if you're not doing either or, then in my opinion, cut it out. Okay.
So there's still people still getting quite sick in that group. I wish I could say it was a thing of the past, but it really isn't. We're still dealing with it. We're still seeing suffering patients. We're still working long hours.
Like I said,
to the point of
find the
exhaustion.
close-ups, build
That
around
said,
it.
we still have to worry about things like long COVID or post-COVID condition. That's definitely still a worry for us. And coupled with the fact that people just don't want to hear about COVID anymore. I would say also that people just want to move on. You should check out the perspective of a pharmacist.
Terrific, thank you. Having heard from
There's a little match on action cut there just to give it a little bit of spice. It makes the flow more seamless, and it makes the reality flow more believable.
the front line, I need to seek out the experts who can help me inform healthcare practitioners.
So these transitions were used with a slow shutter speed, and Kaio had this envisioned in his head right from the visual deck that he pitched to me. Whenever you want to do something flashy, plan it from the beginning, be very intentional. Don't try to do it afterwards when everything's filmed. I think it goes a long way in terms of giving strength to your film. Intentionality is powerful. You can test things afterwards, but the audience can tell that you're trying to hide something, or you're trying something that isn't really uniform with the branding of the film. So keep that in mind.
I'm just doing a little bit of research regarding COVID-19. Can you tell me what is age-related immune system decline?
When we think about aging or the aging body, think about experiencing mileage, that things start to kind of wear down, and we think about older patients being more vulnerable to infections like COVID-19 or other respiratory viruses because the immune system isn't as strong as it once was.
So there's a lot of graphics that we use there. So when we move things around to make it work, you will have continuity issues, and that was important, but it was also important to cut away to extra context that would add to the scene. These graphics were also designed by Danny, so we made sure that the branding was also uniform throughout the entire film. So being an editor for so long, I encourage everyone to just take projects and recut them and try different things. We're not here to just press buttons. We're here to collaborate with the director, where we can explore and try out different avenues that aren't on the page. I think some editors nowadays, they feel like they want to put themselves into a mold, and they want to edit like one thing. Like they're like, oh, I want to be just a music video editor, or I just want to be like this narrative horror editor. I want to be just a documentary editor. But I think editing is such a versatile role where you should just cut everything. Cut everything, try everything. Every project will elevate your next project. An editor once told me that you are your last project, and that project is an accumulation of everything you've done in the past. And you can't really find that if you're only trying to do one thing. So cut anything you can get your hands on, explore, experiment, watch films, watch what's on Vimeo, but also listen to what other editors are doing in terms of how they proceed with their edit. Because that's what filmmaking is all about. It's about creating new things.